Everyone in the Beijing circle knows that my son and I are Adrian's most cherished treasures. If I wanted to see stars, he would spend 100 million to create a meteor shower. My son liked carousels, so he built the largest amusement park named after him. He was never stingy with his love for us mother and son. On the day my son and I were in a car accident, Adrian brought in a renowned medical team to save me. I held on with my last breath and told him to save our son first. Choking back tears, he told me that our son had died from excessive blood loss on the way to the hospital. Overwhelmed with grief, I could no longer hold on and fainted. When I woke up, I heard his conversation with the doctor outside the door. Adrian, the young master could clearly have been saved. Why did you just watch your own son die? Adrian's voice sounded nonchalant. Ethan's existence was originally to save the child of Vivian and me. If he doesn't die, how can I legitimately take out his heart and give it to Noah? I've been good enough to Evelyn and her son these years, now it's their turn to repay me. It turned out that Adrian's kindness to my son and me was in exchange for taking my son's heart. The suffering of my son and me was all orchestrated by him. In that case, I would fulfill his wish. Outside the rescue room, separated by a door, I heard Adrian chuckle. To protect the young master, Madame suffered severe trauma to her uterus, and to save her life, it had to be removed. The doctor's voice was fearful. Adrian, do you mean? Madame has already lost one child. By doing this, you're making it so she can never be a mother again. Don't you think this is too cruel? Adrian's tone remained flat. In this lifetime I will only have Noah as my child. And as compensation, Evelyn will be my wife forever. Perform the surgery as soon as possible. I'm going to check on Noah, he and Vivian must need me right now. By the way, be careful during the procedure, my wife is afraid of pain. In my dazed consciousness, Adrian's footsteps grew fainter down the hallway. My hands clenched at my sides were pierced bloody by my nails, and I could no longer hold back the tears streaming down my face. It turned out that the good husband and father my son and I were so proud of was fake. The love he gave us was also fake. The only truth was that he had orchestrated a 6-year deception, using a meticulously planned car accident to take my son's heart. As the anesthetic gradually entered my body, my consciousness became increasingly blurred. I only felt cold instruments ruthlessly drilling into my body, the chill causing me to have one nightmare after another. In the dream, it was pitch black, and my son stood in the darkness with an empty cavity where his beating heart should have been. He reached out toward me, crying, "Mom, Ethan hurts so much, Mom. Ethan." I woke up from the dream, meeting Adrian's concerned eyes. "Honey, you're finally awake. Do you know how worried I've been these 2 days that I might lose you?" He hugged me tremblingly. "I've already lost our son, I can't lose you too." My ear pressed against Adrian's chest, the rapid heartbeat seeming to confirm that his words were true. Adrian added, "Honey, the doctor said the accident injured your uterus, we might not be able to have children anymore. But that's okay, having you is enough for me." He spoke with such conviction. In the past, I would have felt fortunate to have married such a good man. But now, with my body full of scars and a defective me, his superb acting made me feel nauseous. I subtly pushed him away. "Where is Ethan? I want to see him." Adrian paused, then touched my head with a low tone. "I'm sorry, honey, I was afraid you'd be heartbroken seeing our son's body, so I arranged for cremation yesterday." He wasn't afraid I'd be sad seeing our son, he was clearly worried I'd see the chest where our son's heart had been removed. I forcibly suppressed the hatred in my eyes and looked at the crooked red bracelet on Adrian's wrist. It was a gift from our son. Before the accident, Adrian often suffered from insomnia at night. Our son learned from his school teacher how to weave bracelets, then braided red string with mugwort and gave it to him. At that time, Adrian looked shocked at the not-so-beautiful bracelet. He opened his mouth but didn't speak for a long time. It wasn't until our son called him Dad again that he took the bracelet, solemnly put it on his wrist, hugged our son, and said, "Ethan, thank you, Dad likes it very much." Thinking back now, while our son was worried about Adrian's insomnia, his insomnia was for planning the seemingly accidental car crash. Adrian followed my gaze and also saw the bracelet. A complex emotion flashed in his eyes, and he covered the bracelet with his sleeve. "Honey, I promise you, I will, like you, spend the rest of my life remembering our Ethan." I lowered my eyes and said nothing more. If there was one consolation at this moment, it was that our son believed from beginning to end that Adrian loved him. But I couldn't forget because of this that he was the one who harmed our son. "Ethan, Mom will definitely avenge you. I will also leave this hypocritical murderer who hurt us." Because I disliked the smell of hospital disinfectant, the next day, Adrian took me home. If I hadn't seen through his demonic nature, Adrian would have been a very good husband. He would personally cook for me, thoughtfully remembering all my dietary restrictions. He even worried about my lingering trauma from the accident, soaking my feet and massaging me every night. It wasn't until the third day home that Adrian left early, using work as an excuse. From his phone screen that he hadn't turned off in time, I saw a message from Vivian. "Adrian, Noah keeps crying for Dad, I really can't soothe him." Vivian's child wanted his dad, and Adrian rushed to his side without a second thought. My son, however, died on the way to see his dad. I silently watched Adrian leave, then went up to the third floor and stood in front of his study. Married for 5 years, Adrian had locked his study with a password, citing that couples need personal space. I entered Vivian and Noah's birthdays, and sure enough, the door opened. The spacious study had walls covered with photos of their family of 3. From Vivian's pregnancy and birth to Noah's full moon, first tooth, and first step, Adrian had documented everything. But the photos of my son from birth to death over 4 years couldn't even fill a small album. I then opened the diary on Adrian's desk. May 20th, Vivian said she had a surprise for me. Though I guessed it was news of her pregnancy, when she personally placed the pregnancy test in front of me, I couldn't help but tear up. January 23rd, I became a father. I named him Noah. He was so tiny. When I held him in my arms, in that instant, I almost wanted to give all my assets to the mother and son. But the next second, the doctor told me Noah was born with congenital heart disease. September 30th, for Noah, I got married, but the bride wasn't Vivian. "Vivian, I will definitely be a good husband and a good father." Seeing the last sentence he wrote, the handwriting almost piercing through the paper as if with great determination, I couldn't help but smile bitterly. So, marrying me was such a burdensome task. No wonder 5 years ago, when I joyfully presented the pregnancy report to Adrian, he was silent for a long time. Then, as if completing a task, he said to me, "Thank you." When Ethan was born, Adrian didn't even hold him. His first look at him was just calmly instructing the doctor to take Ethan for a full body checkup, especially the heart. On our wedding night, the room had no lights on. By the moonlight from the window, I could see Adrian's face clearly. In the past, I thought he was shy. Now it seems it was just because the person he wanted to marry wasn't me, and the face he wanted to see wasn't mine. The diary entries were disorganized, all about Vivian and Noah. The latest date was 7 days ago. Perhaps mugwort really helps with sleep. I had a good sleep and even dreamed of. Adrian didn't write further, and I had no interest in looking anymore. I photographed the diary contents, sent them to the private investigator I hired, and put it back in place. As I left the study, Adrian returned. Seeing me come down from the 3rd floor, a trace of panic crossed his calm face. "Why did you suddenly go upstairs? Your injuries aren't healed yet, you need more bed rest." I refused his instinctive support. "I've been lying in bed too long, I'm tired." Adrian stared at me, seeing my normal expression, and secretly sighed in relief. He took out something from behind him. "Honey, your favorite pastries from East City, I specially went to buy them for you." I do like East City's pastries, that's true. But 5 minutes ago, Vivian posted a picture of the same pastries on Facebook. Caption: Noah said he wanted them, and someone drove 2 hours to buy them. She actually often posted such ambiguous Facebook updates before. But back then, I never imagined the someone she referred to as my husband. In a place Adrian couldn't see, I liked Vivian's Facebook post. I thought, wait a bit more. Once I find enough evidence, it will be over between Adrian and me. When settling the final payment with the private investigator, Vivian contacted me. She arranged to meet at a villa in the suburbs. The house was decorated warmly in warm tones, unlike my home with Adrian. He said he liked simplicity, so all the furniture and decorations were in black, white, and gray. Vivian sat on the sofa, leisurely admiring her new manicure. You finally know about my relationship with Adrian. Having obtained Ethan's heart, she didn't even pretend anymore. Adrian promised me he would bring Noah and me home and let Noah recognize his ancestors. I looked at Vivian calmly. Did you call me here just to tell me this? My indifferent tone froze Vivian's smugness on her face. She suddenly stood up from the sofa. Evelyn, in what capacity are you speaking to me? As Adrian's wife? Stop dreaming. Do you think Adrian really loves you? Back then, it was for Noah and me that he. Her words stopped abruptly, but she couldn't swallow her anger. In relationships, the unloved one is the mistress. The child too. My Noah will be Adrian's only son. Everything he has will be Noah's. As for your dead son, burn a few more paper money when you miss him. Mentioning Ethan, the anger in my chest couldn't be suppressed. I wanted to slap her face, but my physical weakness allowed Vivian to grab my hand tightly. She leaned close to me, emphasizing each word. You deserve it for not protecting your child. Humiliation and resentment surged, reddening my eyes. I used all my strength to push Vivian away, but she suddenly grabbed my hand and slapped her own face with it. She fell to the ground, looking at me aggrievedly. Sister Evelyn, I'm also sad that Ethan died, but where did I offend you that you treat me like this? Before I could react, a strong force from behind pushed me down. My forehead hit the coffee table, and blood immediately flowed out. Adrian acted as if he didn't see, nervously helping Vivian up. Vivian, are you okay? Anything wrong? Vivian shook her head, but tears fell. Adrian, my head hurts so much. Adrian frowned tightly, glaring at me viciously. Evelyn, your child is dead, why are you coming here to act crazy? Hurry up and apologize to Vivian. Filled with hate and anger, I could no longer control my tears. Adrian, get this straight, my child is also your biological son. He called you dad for 4 years. Adrian's expression stiffened, his gaze fixed on the bracelet on his wrist. In that instant, he felt the bracelet weighed 1,000 pounds. His arm began to tremble, and he dared not meet my eyes again. He turned away awkwardly, his heart feeling as if gripped tightly by a large hand, causing him painful difficulty in breathing. It wasn't until Vivian sobbed that Adrian seemed to grasp at a lifesaver. He suddenly picked her up horizontally. Vivian, I'll take you to the hospital. Adrian left holding Vivian, his steps were quick, but when passing me, they seemed unusually heavy. In the empty living room, only I remained. On my phone were the audio I had just recorded and all the evidence sent by the private investigator. One video showed Ethan lying in a pool of blood, reaching out his small hand toward Adrian. Dad, save me, Ethan hurts so much, Dad. But the man just kept a cold face, watching the child's hand drop little by little to the ground. I looked at Ethan's face on the screen, seeing the longing for his dad and his eyes turn from hope to confusion to despair. So, my child knew the truth that his dad didn't love him before he died. What was he thinking then? Did I do something wrong, or why is Dad doing this to me? Or perhaps, Mom, run. Pain, hatred, various emotions made my whole body tremble. Footsteps came from behind again. A 5- or 6-year-old child with a pale face, holding an airplane model, stood at the bedroom door. He asked me, Auntie, who are you? Why are you in my house? His face was so familiar, and his heartbeat was equally familiar. I stared at his chest. Beneath the clothes beating was my son's heart. If not for Noah, my Ethan wouldn't have died. So why should Ethan be dead while he lives? My gaze gradually turned cold, then in Noah's puzzled eyes, I slowly squatted down. Be good, Noah. Come home with Auntie. Auntie has prepared candy for you. On the drive to the hospital, Adrian kept frowning tightly. Images of me tearfully questioning him kept flashing before his eyes. Each recollection felt like a stone smashed into his heart, heavy, making him increasingly anxious. Suddenly, the phone rang in the quiet, eerie space. In the receiver, my voice was calm like an emotionless robot. Adrian, Noah is in my hands. The car screeched to a halt by the roadside. Adrian gripped the steering wheel tightly with both hands. A terrifying thought suddenly arose in his mind. Could it be, she knows the truth? When Adrian and Vivian arrived, I was kneeling in the living room, gently wiping my son's portrait, as if afraid to hurt him. In the photo, my son's smile was brilliant, his eyes curved like crescents. I had sworn to protect this smile for life, to shield my son from all the world's malice. Who knew that the person with the greatest malice toward him in the whole world was the dad he liked the most and once thought loved him the most? Vivian, pale-faced, shrieked, "Evelyn, where is Noah? Where did you take him?" I didn't speak, continuing my actions. Vivian's voice was sharp. "Evelyn, hand over Noah quickly, don't force me to call the police. If you're convicted of kidnapping a child, I wonder how you'll continue as Adrian's wife or stand in the Beijing circle." Adrian's wife? They killed my child and still think I covet the position of Adrian's wife. I lifted my head, looking at her faintly. "If your son is gone, you can ask me for him. If my son is gone, who should I ask for him?" Vivian, with her keen mind and guilty conscience, sharply caught the implication in my words and was stunned. Though Adrian was panicked inside, he still believed the plan was flawless and could deceive everyone. Probably fearing I'd harm Noah, Adrian frowned tightly, suppressing his anger. "Evelyn, Noah is innocent, you can't take your grudge against Vivian out on the child. Ethan is gone, and I'm heartbroken too, but you can't take Noah away just because you lost your child, to make Vivian taste the same pain. Tell me where you hid Noah, this is a matter of life and death." Adrian's words made me feel as if my own heart had been entirely removed, raw with pain. I hugged Ethan's portrait tightly to my chest, but no matter how hard I pressed, it couldn't fill the empty hole. I smiled bitterly, a matter of life and death? When I spoke again, my voice carried a piercing chill. Your son has only been missing for a few hours, and it's a matter of life and death? My Ethan suffered an inexplicable car accident and had his heart removed. What is a true matter of life and death? This is. Adrian's face changed drastically. His eyes evaded, not daring to meet mine, and his tone became stiff. What nonsense are you talking? Ethan's death report clearly states he died from excessive blood loss. I won't allow you to speculate wildly, preventing Ethan from resting in peace even after death. Excessive blood loss. I murmured, repeating, was it really excessive blood loss? Vivian's tone was urgent, with a hint of undetectable tension. The doctor said it himself, how could it be fake? Stop being paranoid there, hurry and give me back my Noah. I ignored her, just facing Adrian with eyes full of sorrow. Every day I dream of Ethan, dreaming of him crying for help, saying his chest hurts so much, saying someone dug out his heart. I stared straight at Adrian. Who would be so cruel to dig out a child's heart? You're Ethan's dad, he always liked and depended on you so much. Hasn't he cried to you about this in your dreams? Cold sweat beaded on Adrian's forehead, and his voice trembled slightly. Honey, you must be too grief-stricken, always being paranoid. When I'm not busy in a while, I'll take you out to relax, okay? Paranoid? Adrian, even now you're still lying to me. You sent someone to crash into my son, conspired with the doctor to deceive me. You removed my son's heart and transplanted it to your son with Vivian. Do you really think I don't know all this? I threw all the evidence I had investigated at Adrian. Adrian's face instantly turned ashen. Vivian realized the matter was exposed, covering her mouth and looking at him in horror. In disbelief, he flipped through the other evidence. Records of Adrian and Vivian's conversations, Noah's medical records, surveillance footage of Adrian at the accident scene, even hospital records of him arranging the removal of my uterus. All this evidence showed that I had completely learned everything he had deceived me about over these years. Adrian's breathing became rapid, the panic in his eyes clear. He growled lowly, these are all forged. He grabbed my shoulders, these were deliberately forged by others to sow discord between us. Honey, believe me, I've been so good to you and Ethan, how could I do something to betray you and Ethan? I laughed, yes, you were so good to Ethan and me, we thought you were the best husband and father. But the fact is, I heard with my own ears everything you planned with the doctor. Adrian released his grip dejectedly. The accident was designed by you single-handedly, with the purpose of taking Ethan's heart to transplant to Noah and cure his heart disease. You had long planned for our child to die, all these years you were good to him out of your guilt. It was you who had the doctor remove my uterus, not only taking my child but making me lose the ability to be a mother forever. Adrian wanted to argue but only opened his mouth futilely, unable to say a word in rebuttal. You said you would only have Noah as your child. And I would be your wife forever? I sneered. Bullshit, Adrian's wife. I glared at them fiercely, as if to devour them alive. I want to avenge Ethan, even if it ruins me and costs everything, I want you to pay blood for blood. Vivian was frightened by the hatred in my eyes, involuntarily shrinking her shoulders. I smiled faintly, you conspired to kill my son, do you think I'll let your son off easy? Vivian screamed, no. Do you think you can convict us with this? What status does Adrian have, what power and wealth does the Fu family have, as his wife, you know better than I. I warn you, Evelyn, you'd better not act rashly, or no one can save you. If you dare touch a hair on Noah, Adrian, and I won't let you go. But Adrian's face was ashen, painfully closing his eyes. Honey, I'm the one who wronged you, betraying your and Ethan's trust. Adrian, what are you saying? How can you admit it? Vivian tried to interrupt him, but Adrian ignored her and continued, I know no matter what I do, you won't forgive me anymore. But please give me one more chance, I'll compensate you, using my entire remaining life to make up for my sins. But Noah is just a child, he's innocent. Compensate? I laughed sarcastically, how will you compensate me? What compensation can make up for my son's life? Adrian's eyes reddened, Evelyn, I'm sorry. You did wrong me, but the one you wronged most isn't me, it's Ethan. I won't believe a single word you say anymore, I'll call the police, hand over the evidence, and let you and your beloved her. I pointed at Vivian, shocked by Adrian's confession and completely at a loss for excuses. Pay the price for your crimes. We can't let her call the police. Vivian grabbed Adrian's arm tightly, shaking it hard. If she hands the evidence to the police, we'll definitely go to jail. Adrian! Wake up. If you want to die, do it yourself, don't drag me down with you. I gathered the evidence and stood to walk out the door. Adrian seemed to hear nothing, shaking off Vivian and tightly grabbing my wrist. His voice carried pain and pleading. Evelyn, I'm the one who wronged you and our son. Before he finished, sirens sounded. Police entered from outside, and Adrian subconsciously released his hand. I quickly stepped behind the police, watching them surround Adrian and Vivian firmly. Mr. Adrian, Ms. Vivian, we've received a report accusing you of murder and illegal organ transplantation, please come with us. No, it's not like that. Vivian screamed, you must be mistaken, it's this woman, her. She pointed at me, she kidnapped my son. The one you should arrest is her. Footsteps came from upstairs. Looking up, I saw Noah rubbing his eyes coming out of the study, clearly just woken up. Dad, Mom, have you come to pick up Noah? Vivian's face instantly turned pale. You already called the police, you deliberately used Noah to lure us here? You set a trap for us. I looked at her coldly and handed all the evidence to the police. This is the evidence I've collected of their crimes, please handle it according to the law. Vivian was still struggling desperately. He's the only son of the Fu family, Adrian. President of Fu Group. Don't you know his status in the Beijing circle? You dare arrest him? Don't you value your lives? Don't arrest me, I didn't do anything. It was Adrian, he planned it all single-handedly, I knew nothing. Adrian hadn't expected her to push everything onto him, his eyes were full of shock. Looking at Vivian with her venomous mouth and random accusations, he realized he almost didn't recognize her. Before being escorted into the police car, Adrian looked back at me one last time, his expression complex. There was regret, guilt, and perhaps the love he used to pretend in front of me? Now, do you think I'll still believe it? I tightened my hold on my son's portrait in my arms, looking at him coldly. Ethan, Mom won't let any of those who harmed you go. Mom will definitely avenge you. The Fu family had a powerful background, running around privately trying to exonerate Adrian. In the evidence we collected, although Adrian's motive was there and the process was fairly complete, the evidence proving Vivian's full involvement was not complete enough. She did interfere in my family, morally despicable, but it couldn't convict her based on that. And Vivian insisted she was unaware, pushing all the blame onto Adrian. Adrian, perhaps considering their years of affection, didn't refute her statements in court. He just looked deeply at Vivian, who lied profusely and slandered to exonerate herself, his eyes full of disappointment. Watching the person he once loved more than life become unrecognizable, this taste was one Adrian personally invited me to experience. I looked at Adrian's nearly perfect profile, recalling the beautiful dreams he meticulously wove for Ethan and me over these years. When the dream shattered, I realized the world was a vast inescapable net. Although Adrian didn't expose Vivian's lies, he wasn't foolish enough to directly plead guilty. Thus, the first court session's result was not ideal. Before the second court session, I visited Ethan. Placing a bunch of white chrysanthemums in front of the tombstone, I gently stroked Ethan's name on it. It's hard to imagine that not long ago, he was standing perfectly fine in front of me, bouncing around planning that when vacation came, we should take him to the beach. Adrian and I specially took him to buy a little duck swim ring, swimsuit, goggles. And vacation arrived in the blink of an eye, when children should be free and playful. My lively, active, fun-loving Ethan could only lie here in cold solitude. I recalled then how Adrian looked at Ethan, ignited by the mall's lively atmosphere, chattering non-stop, inadvertently revealing confusion, reluctance, and hesitation in his eyes. At the time, I felt it strange, but Adrian's consistent deception over the years prevented me from immediately becoming alert. When Ethan, holding the newly bought toy, jumped into his arms, hugging his neck and saying, "Dad is so good." In Adrian's heart, however, he was planning the car accident that would soon take Ethan's life, and the surgery that left no intact body, only full of pain and a cruel truth more painful than the wounds. A slender, well-defined hand placed another bunch of yellow chrysanthemums next to the white ones. It was Adrian. The Fu family covered the sky with one hand. I wasn't actually surprised he could appear here. He looked at Ethan's tombstone, painfully closing his eyes, tears rolling from the corners. "Ethan, Dad is sorry." I sneered. "When he was lying on the ground begging you to save him, why didn't you remember you were his dad?" He didn't argue. "What I owe you, mother and son, I can't repay in this lifetime." "Then please leave quickly, neither Ethan nor I welcome you." He turned his face away, quickly wiping the tears from his eyes with the back of his hand, revealing the red mugwort bracelet Ethan had woven himself from his sleeve. I collapsed instantly. "Adrian, do you even have a heart?" "The bracelet you're wearing was woven by Ethan in his spare time after homework. For this, he didn't watch his favorite TV shows for several days. When you worked late, Ethan wouldn't sleep, guarding the window looking out, just to greet you at the door first thing when you returned. Were you really working overtime, or fooling around with Vivian, accompanying your child with her? When you were sick, he worried so much he couldn't sleep, sneaking out several times a night to peek through the door crack to see if you were uncomfortable. You weren't even willing to act fully. Before death, you let him see your true face. You prevent him from resting in peace even after death. When he cried in pain, reaching out to you, how could you bear not to hug him, just coldly watching him gasp his last in a pool of blood? Adrian, you're not even human. The biggest regret of my life is marrying you." Adrian looked at my frail figure swaying from grief and anger, subconsciously reaching out. He seemed to want to hug me but was pushed staggering by me. I wiped the tears from my face. You should have seen it already. I pointed to our son's name on the tombstone. I'll divorce you, you're not worthy to be Ethan's dad. From now on, he's my son alone. Adrian's eyes filled with heavy pain. I know, no matter what I say or do now, you and Ethan won't forgive me anymore. I did wrong, I deserve it, I accept. I agree to divorce you, but not now. Please give me a few more days, allow me to do one last thing for you and Ethan. Whether you believe it or not, this time, I won't disappoint you again. He bowed deeply to our son's tombstone, tears falling and wetting the soil underfoot. Then he straightened up and turned to leave. Having walked some distance, Adrian turned back to look at me. Evelyn, at first, I was good to you and Ethan indeed out of deception. But gradually, I couldn't help myself. I couldn't bear to sacrifice Ethan, nor to see you sad. But Noah's heart disease worsened, and Vivian questioned if, having my own family, I no longer planned to care for them. It was probably a momentary lapse. I forced myself to harden my heart and plan the accident and surgery. To fulfill the promise I made to Vivian and Noah back then. Watching Ethan die with my own eyes, I was heartbroken. Heartbroken to the point I couldn't say a word or move a finger. I used all my strength to force a cold face, fearing I'd cry out the next second. I told myself this was right, just a part of the plan. Originally, we had this child to transplant a heart to Noah. But I still cried. When they did the heart transplant for Noah, I smoked in the bathroom all afternoon, tears flowing uncontrollably. Vivian searched for a long time but couldn't find me. The title of wife wasn't just for compensation. In my heart, the wife can only be you. Now I've also seen Vivian's true face, but unfortunately, it's too late. Evelyn, I've unknowingly fallen in love with you long ago. Though saying this now has no meaning. I recalled the meteor shower Adrian spent a fortune to create for me back then. Meteors streaked across the sky. I clasped my hands and made a wish, may our family of 3 love each other forever and never separate. But even the meteor shower was fake. How could the wish not go against expectations? Until the second trial, I still hadn't collected strong evidence that Vivian was also a mastermind, and I was at a loss against the forces behind Adrian. Who knew Adrian would confess everything in court, leading to him and Vivian being convicted on the spot? Vivian became hysterical, trying to rush at Adrian but held back firmly by the police. Adrian, are you crazy? What nonsense are you spouting? Why did you say these things? No one but you knew I did them. You betrayed me. How dare you betray me? You kept saying you liked me, doing everything in my and Noah's name. Now that it's exposed, you want to drag me down. If you like me, how can you bear to see me die? It was all lies. You've been lying to me all these years. You can't treat me like this. Have you forgotten our Noah? Noah is still so young, he can't be without his mom. Adrian, framing me like this, you'll die a horrible death. Adrian looked at her manic appearance, no trace of emotion left in his eyes. Ultimately, Adrian and Vivian were sentenced to death for murder and illegal organ transplantation. The Fu family fell, pushed by everyone, and soon vanished from the Beijing circle. On the day of the execution, I didn't go to watch but came to my son's grave. Ethan, Mom has finally avenged you. All who harmed you have received their due punishment. I've divorced Adrian, but don't worry that Mom will be alone forever. He transferred all his assets to Mom. Mom plans to use them to establish a foundation. Specifically to help children like you who had organs illegally removed, and families who lost children because of it. Ethan, Mom misses you so much. A year later, while volunteering at the orphanage, accompanying children playing, a familiar figure caught my attention. He sat alone in the corner, head down playing with a worn airplane model. I slowly walked over, squatted down, and softly called, Noah? He lifted his head, looked at me seriously for a while. Auntie, I remember you, he said softly. Looking at him, my heart was filled with mixed emotions. Back then, when I took him from Vivian's house, thoughts of revenge filled my mind. Yet he was completely unguarded toward me, eating the snacks Ethan loved before death, drinking Ethan's favorite drinks, playing with Ethan's toys happily. When he smiled, his eyes curved like crescents, just like Ethan's. It made my eyes red, and I quickly turned away. But he keenly caught my emotion, asking anxiously, "Auntie, what's wrong? Did I make you unhappy somewhere?" He was as sensible as my Ethan. I shook my head, choking. Auntie just thought of her own son. Where is he now? I touched Noah's head. He became a star in the sky. Noah seemed to understand something. Auntie, don't be sad, you've been so good to Noah. Noah will come see you often in the future to cheer you up. Later, tired from playing, he curled up beside me like a kitten and soon fell asleep. I pressed my ear to his chest, listening to the vibrant, healthy heart that originally belonged to my son, beating strongly in his chest. In that instant, the surging hatred in my chest suddenly subsided. I thought, this might be Ethan's last way of protecting me, telling me not to go astray because of hate. In the end, I chose not to harm Noah. Noah's chubby baby face from a year ago gradually overlapped with his now thin face. He wasn't just thinner, he was less lively than before. Auntie, I'm sorry. Noah suddenly spoke. I was stunned. He lowered his head, fingers tightly clutching his clothes, voice barely audible. I know, my heart is your child's. It was Dad and Mom who did wrong, harming your child. I'm sorry. My heart trembled sharply, eyes instantly moist. I hugged him, slowly squatting down. Turning my face, I pressed one ear to his chest. His heartbeat came through the thin shirt, so strong, so familiar. That was Ethan's heartbeat. I closed my eyes, tears silently falling. After a long time, I wiped my tears, hugged Noah tightly one last time. Please carry Ethan's heart and live well. When leaving the orphanage, Noah escorted me all the way to the door. I didn't look back or glance at him again. I knew I wouldn't come to this orphanage again. I also knew I would continue on with memories of Ethan.